Good morning, good morning, good morning. You know who it is, the Cat in the Hatch, resident fly guy. Was today, it's the Cat in the Cap. Resident fly guy, your chief architect, Michelangelo of StarArchitects.com. Here to help you redesign your frame of mind when it comes to this lifestyle thing. And yo, it's Friday. We have made it to Friday. And today we're going to be talking about how to tie your influence essentially to your image. So by the end of this live conversation, you should be able to really understand why it's important for you to show consistency in your identity, to curate the uniform, right? The things that you're consistently wearing around that identity, and then ultimately how to communicate that effectively so that you are properly influencing the people around you effectively. So yes, thank you for the for the thumbs up, and for checking us out. And for everybody on the replay, please make sure that you do the same. Give us some thumbs up. This will help the channel to grow. Handicap Business, what's going on, sir? Thank you very much for always being a part of this, always providing amazing energy. So guys, whether you're watching this live or on the replay, please remember that this is a conversation, not a verbal dissertation. However, if you don't got anything to say, I will drop that sermon. I will hop on my soapbox real quick. So today, again, we're going to be talking all about how to be more influential with your image without saying the word. And I was going to title this "The More You Know, The More You Owe," which is what we talked about on my Instagram. But again, for analytical purposes, we're going to talk about how to. And it's going to be a quick video because I got somebody who's coming to pick up something I sold online today. So I can't be on here too long. But you know that usually means about 10 to 15 minutes. So quick story. I was actually here at home. I was watching a great show here on YouTube called Tom Bilyeu's, what's called Health Theory, but it's by Tom Bilyeu. And I had a guest on who was talking about sleep. And so he's giving some amazing scientific research on the importance of sleep, how sleep actually affects our health and our diets in a very profound way that we don't necessarily recognize. So super enlightening. You should check it out. Tom Bilyeu, Health Theory. I'll put the link in the replay so that you guys can see that. But of course, they're giving you some tips and some tricks on how to sleep better, how to, just make sure that you are getting the most out of your sleep, so you don't have to sleep super long periods of time, but you needed to have effective sleep. And then after that, I was like, oh man, I feel amazing. Man, this is so enlightening. So of course, the next thing is to start practicing these things that are going to be beneficial and healthy for me, right? Wrong. Knew it, didn't do anything with it, right? Still, matter of fact, I didn't not only not do anything with it, I went back to my old habits. Now, how does this affect the rest of my movements? Well, the minute that my brain knew that, brain was like, yo, so we just gonna go back to what we were doing before? Oh, okay. Well, now I'm tired now, because I know, I can get more effective sleep. My brain would wake up to me like, yo, we could have slept well tonight. Hey, we could have slept well tonight. And I'm like, listen, brain, man, I know, okay? I know. Right? But just because you know something doesn't mean that you understand it. Just because you understand it doesn't mean that you understand it, right? You have really internalized it so that you can implement that into your life. And so I wanted to talk to you guys about what influence actually is. Influence is not just knowledge of who you are. It's not just knowledge of self-awareness. It's actually being able to enact and implement these elements of who you are, what you are representing, and the type of influence that you want to have, the intention for the influence that you want to have in these spaces that you are in. So how do we do that? Well, first and foremost, we have to have an awareness of self. More so than not, over the last 2 years, we've been talking, I've heard successful people talk about self-awareness. I've heard people talk about really understanding who you are and what you want to represent. I have found a certain obsession in identity. And it's because I've been on a search for identity probably for most of my life. I grew up without a father figure in my house. And when I was going to church, a pastor at one point said, women provide intimacy. They control the intimate elements of development and relationships. So whether you're talking about a romantic relationship or the intimacy that's shared with, you know, a mother and her son or a mother and her daughter, they create those elements of what intimacy actually looks like. The safe spaces for you to grow, cultivate, be vulnerable, open up, and really share certain elements of you. That is the feminine presence that's often associated with women. On the masculine side is associated with consciousness, with presence. We talked about those things. So they provide the information that helps shape and create our identity. So this is why I'm so adamant about men, but especially fathers, being involved in their children's lives, because they create the identity. Is when we hear fathers say, you know, they have to go do something. Hey, you're the man of the house, that you see those little kids' chest puff up. You see them rise in awareness of who they are. When a father tells his daughter that, you know, that he's her princess, right? Like that you're a princess. There's a certain element and association that she sees and that she begins to experience behind the information in that identity. So it's very important, guys. Roberto, what's going on? Thank you very much for joining. And so in that same space, you have a obligation to yourself above everybody else to be true to who you are. You owe, and before you know who you are, you got to figure out who you are. So it's vitally important that you know, right, that you know who you are, and then you owe it to yourself to begin to cultivate that understanding. Because here's the interesting thing. Most men and most people are never going to really figure out who they are, and this is because they never have any intention on doing so, right? They're content with being ignorantly attuned to everybody else, to what everybody else is saying that they're supposed to be, to what everybody else says that they have to do. Now usually the definition of a man is to be an arrogant, stuck-up jerk and show no emotion. So-called tough guy, yeah. I mean, to a certain degree, yeah. I totally agree with that. Handicap. It's one of those things where taking it a step deeper, right? That's the social awareness. But then a lot of people are not figuring out who they are just as people, as beings, right? What is your purpose? What are your passions? What drives you? What motivates you? That's superficial, right? But then who else are you on a consistent daily basis? What energy are you emitting every time that you step out? Are you present? Am I a present person? Is that something that I need to make sure that I'm being much more aware of? So there's all these different elements and nuanced pieces of who we are that we're always going to be learning about, but we haven't even acknowledged because we're so busy being influenced by that societal belief that says manhood is about non-emotion and about tough guy. You know, I'm here to protect, but what are you protecting? Are you just protecting physically? Well, then what about mentally? What about emotionally? What about spiritually? What about developmentally? Are you creating these spaces so that people can grow and learn about who they are? What about when it comes to identifiers and identity? Are you protecting that as well so that they can really grow up into those things, and you're also recognizing the identities that they're actually creating for themselves? And so we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to the people that we love, and we owe it to the next generation to not only recognize those things, but to begin to identify those and show up the integrity of authenticity and sincerity for who we are whenever we step out. It would be counterproductive and it would be inauthentic if me at the age that I am, a man should only use his muscle when it's absolutely necessary. Now, handicap vision, I might have to disagree with you only in this space. The mind is a muscle, so you should be using your muscle constantly. A man should only have to use brute force when it's only necessary. Because, again, a man who understands war, a man who understands conflict, understands, you know, Sun Tzu's The Art of War, or if you read Robert Greene's The 33 Strategies of War, the ultimate goal is to not have to use physical altercations in order to create that. But don't think that muscle is not necessarily enforced. The brain is a muscle, something we have to continuously exercise. So I want you to make sure that you are always, I just want to make sure that everybody else understands that handicap vision. Wise man, I know. So he's on the same page. But so within that space, it is vitally important that we understand identity. And part of the reason why we talk about style number one, I love clothing. I love its symbology. I love what it represents. And it is a representation. It's a representation of how you're putting things together, what you're thinking about, and what you are concerning yourself with. And we have to be intentional about that. Master Yip, what's going on, sir? Salute. Great to see you, as always. And so in this space, we have to start being more intentional about how we are moving. What does that mean for that style aspect? Well, you know, if you've been rocking with me for a little while, or if you haven't, we talk here about the consciousness of your character, right? How that is then curated and cultivated within your personal style, and ultimately what that communicates to the community around you. So when we are starting to cultivate the awareness of ourselves, once we have cultivated those things, you owe it to people around you with your image to show up consistently with that image, because that image is going to influence how people experience you. So it's counterproductive, as I said, for me to walk into a space in a t-shirt and some jeans after I have been known as the Cat in the Hat, you know, the good fella fly guy, the, you know, suited and booted, you know, young Harlem, you know, Harlem Renaissance man, right? Very, very few and far between for those second two. But I've been called those things, right? So much so that if I stepped out now, especially, it'd be crazy. But when I was younger, if I would step out and it was incongruent with my consistency, the identity of my consistency, people would call me out. Man, what you got on? Like, that's you. Everybody else can do that. You can't do that. Now, again, I can do whatever I want to, but I understood what they were saying. Like, you can't, this isn't you. This isn't a fair representation of how I'm experiencing you. And it's not because you don't look good in what you have on. I'm not experiencing you like this because there's something inauthentic about it. And so we owe it to ourselves to become much. Okay, so obviously my neighbor is up. You can hear the music from my neighbor. But we owe it to ourselves to maintain that consistency, because that creates a certain level of integrity when we are interacting with somebody. Now, here's the crazy thing when it comes to the last element of this with communicating who you are. If you are inauthentic or you're not maintaining a certain level of consistency in your image, what do you think happens when people start to communicate with you and they don't see the correlation with who you claim to be and how you are showing up? How am I then supposed to trust anything else that you have to say? How am I supposed to trust that you're going to have integrity if we're going to do business together? How am I supposed to trust, or how is a lady supposed to trust that you have positive intentions when you are showing up that way? Because there's also the interesting thing. When you know who you are and you know that you are showing up or acting in contradiction to who that is, you're always going to show up with inauthentic energy. And any young lady who's paying attention to her own intuition is going to immediately pick up on that and greet you with apprehension. So it's not even going to benefit you when you're trying to talk to a young lady. Far, far better for you to know who you are, show up in style as the best version of who you are, to show up in the very best spaces of your existence when you're moving and developing and dealing with people, to approach that young lady and all of your authenticity and get rejected, than to show up, interact with that young lady and be accepted, knowing that you are showing a false representation of who you are. You know better, so do better. So I'm gonna leave you with that. I want you to try that on, see how it fits you. Today's Friday, yo. Make sure that you step out and you experience something new. Make sure that you guys give and show love to those around you. You never know who may need it. And share this with a friend. Like, you know, we do some deeper conversations on styles more than clothes. It's life. That's gonna be the new tagline. What you guys think about that? This was gonna be on the end of the YouTube. It's more than clothes. It's life. As Joe Budden would do. All right, so I want you guys to go out and be great. We will have videos up tonight, 6:30. Outside of that, yo, don't ever forget that dress is nothing more than the expression of a man's state of mind. So you, yes, all of you wonderful fellas out there, should always dress to express. Have an amazing Friday, and I shall see you on Monday. Peace.